I think we saw today Vice President JD Vance gave a major speech at the Munich Security Summit in Munich, Germany, where he very strongly articulated what I think you could argue is the new national conservative case, which included grave concerns around losing Europe to mass migration. It included a strong defense of free speech. And this is now the second time that I think he has intimated, this time I think he was softer than the first time, that Europe's move towards totalitarianism, particularly this mass censorship that they want to impose on our social media companies and on us, on our voice in Europe, that was not only unacceptable, but that it puts our alliance in danger. I mean, he specifically said it puts NATO in danger. So I think the Europeans today got a sense of the depth of which America cares about free speech, that free speech for us is a must-have, not a nice-to-have. In Europe, it feels like it may be more like a nice-to-have. And I think you finally got an administration that's just saying, hey, we're not going to tolerate this censorship and totalitarianism that you're imposing on our companies and attempting to impose on our people.
Yeah, okay, well, let's address that right away. Did he meet with Scholz, or did he keep him on the sidelines?
That is a good question. I am not sure. He did. I believe he did say at the beginning of the speech that they had met, but I don't. Some people, the audience should check on that. It was a second strong. He actually gave a prior speech as well that was also strong. But yeah, this was a big speech. He, of course, there was an assault, by a terrorist in Germany, I believe, less than 48 hours ago. Very dramatic moment. I don't have the latest in terms of deaths and injuries, but it was, he opens with that. He expressed his, of course, great concern and sympathy for the Germans, and then pivoted right away to saying, look, you've got a big mass migration problem, and we have it too, and we've got to get control of our countries. And I think he also said, and I think he really spoke for Americans this way, certainly for me, which is that we actually really love Europe. Like, Americans really care about Europe, like not just as a tourist destination, we care about it as an idea, as the birthplace of the Enlightenment. I mean, for us Americans, Europe is where our ideas that our country was founded on were born, but they were never fully realized until you got to the United States and until you had Thomas Jefferson insist against Alexander Hamilton that we were going to have a Bill of Rights, and that the first thing was going to be free speech, and that we weren't going to mess around about it, that this was number one, that we didn't want to have a country without having this guarantee. And like I said, I don't think Europeans understand the depth of our commitment to that really when they start threatening our free speech rights, as they've been increasingly doing, they need to know that they are threatening their security. That it really makes, we're tired. America is tired. Like, we're very, very tired. It's upsetting to go 20 years of hearing stories of veterans, almost all of whom appear to have PTSD in some way, the combat ones, the struggles they have. I mean, I was with a veteran who lost friends in Afghanistan the day that Biden pulled out, which was a disgrace. So America is tired. We love Europe. We believe in Europe, but they're testing our patience. And I think we finally have an administration that can communicate the depth of our concern around their push towards censorship, and they pioneered it. They developed it. A lot of it was, we've certainly done our part to bring it there, but they are Western Europe is currently the greatest threat to free speech in the West, and I think they need to understand that that's a big problem when it comes to U.S.-European relations.
Yeah, well, we should differentiate this a bit too. I spent a lot of time traveling in Europe in recent years, and I've made it a point in all of the countries I visited, and that's most European countries, East and West, to meet with thought leaders, politicians, journalists, actors, in all the countries that I've gone to, at dinners and lunches. And, I've come to a number of realizations as a consequence. The first is very much akin to what you're describing, which is, what the hell's going on in France and Germany and the UK, the Netherlands, Western Europe, let's say, Western Europe. That's a consequence, in my opinion, fundamentally of Brussels, the European Union, the pernicious effect of Davos, the globalist utopians, the apocalypse mongers, the people who tell you that the future's a miserable and wretched place unless you give us all the power. But that's not Europe. That's Western Europe. Now, the Eastern Europeans, they're a different bunch, and, well, we could walk through them to some degree. Let's start with Hungary, because that's a country that's been absolutely pilloried by the legacy media in the press, in the Western press. And, that Orban has been described as, shoulder to shoulder with, of course, Adolf Hitler, because, he's the guy you drag out when you don't have anything else to say. And I've been to Hungary a number of times, and Hungary has a very sophisticated family policy, pro-family policy, and it's been quite effective. They've knocked their abortion rate down 38% with no increase in policing, so to speak, right? It's part of a cultural shift. They've knocked their divorce rate down substantively. They've increased the proportion of women who are participating in the workforce at the same time. They've slowed the decline in the birth rate. And my experience in Budapest, in particular, where I got to know the Hungarian president, that's not Orban, the previous president, and she was the author of the Hungarian, or one of the authors of the Hungarian pro-family policies. I also saw Budapest rebuilding itself. The goal of the Orban administration is to make Budapest into the most beautiful city in Europe. And, they have some real geographic advantages there. It's built along a river, and it's very beautiful already. And then Poland has a thriving economy. They don't have an immigration issue. And the Eastern Europeans are incredibly dedicated supporters of the Western tradition, and the U.S. in particular, not least because they remember what it was like to spend 75 years under the thumb of the Soviet totalitarians. So even the left-wingers in Eastern Europe aren't completely out of their minds, like they are in Germany in particular, right? So it would be useful and maybe this is already happening, but it would be useful for the Trump administration people to differentiate between the Western Europeans, the Eastern, the European Union types, the globalists, the WEF, and the Eastern Europeans who are, like I thought the last few times that I went through Europe, that the salvation of Europe would be Eastern Europe, surprisingly enough. Like, who would have ever guessed that was going to be the case? So, and the free speech issue, thing is, we still don't understand free speech properly because, you said that if the Europeans keep undermining free speech, and that battle's being played out in the virtual world, particularly with regards likely to X, say, more than anything else, that their security is going to be undermined. And you were thinking about them compromising their relationship with the U.S. But what's necessary to understand is that you do undermine your security by interfering with free speech, because there's no difference between free speech and creative and corrective thought. Those are the same thing. And so any culture that clamps down on the right to free speech, which isn't just another hedonistic privilege, they literally interfere with the mechanism that keeps their country honest and innovative. So it's a disaster.
That's right. Well, of course, it's happening at a moment when I think Europe is started to at least comprehend just how behind it is on technology. The speech that JD Vance gave a couple of days ago was on AI, at least ostensibly on AI, and how the framing that the Trump administration wants is of AI as possibility, as potential, as innovation, not as apocalypse, repression, the sort of the European approach to try to gain control over the technology.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. So look, America is, sounds so corny, but America's back in just a big way. You've just got a character there in the White House they are moving faster than anybody